don't want our baby. Let me come home.
Nolan was always taught to stay with the group. If you leave with me, you come back with me. So that I don't understand. And with me being a parent, if I was in that situation.
She said he was going back to the boat. They said he wanted to stay behind. Those are not the same thing. And somebody is not telling the truth. That single contradiction sits at the center of everything surrounding the death of 18-year-old Nolan Wells, a college football player who went out to celebrate the 4th of July on a barrier island off the Mississippi coast and never came home. His body was found in the water 3 days later. Since then, the explanation his friends gave for why they left that island without him has not held up under scrutiny, not when you lay it next to what other witnesses are now saying, not when you walk through it piece by piece. We're going to do exactly that. Every piece of this story laid out in order so you can see how it fits together and where it doesn't. If you're just catching up, here's what you need to know. Nolan Wells was 18. He went by boat to Horn Island with 3 friends on the 4th of July. His friends came back without him. His body was found 3 days later in the water off the shore of that same island. Authorities say they believe he drowned. His family says that explanation doesn't hold up. The basic story his friends told investigators went like this. According to Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter, Nolan chose to stay behind on the island. He wanted to hang back and talk to a girl. He'd catch a ride home with another group later. That's the version that went out first, and that's the version the sheriff repeated publicly. But the cracks in that story didn't all appear at once. They showed up one at a time, quietly, and each one made the last one worse. The young woman Nolan was reportedly talking to has told a different story than his friends did. According to Ben Crump, she said Nolan told her he was heading back to the boat to leave with his friends. The friends say the opposite, that he told them he was staying with her. Think about what that actually means. The entire justification for leaving Nolan behind rests on one specific conversation, and the 2 people in that conversation are describing opposite versions of what was said. Then there's the identity of the girl herself. Christine, Nolan's mother, said that when she was first told what happened, the friend said Nolan stayed behind for a girl named Katie. But in that same conversation, she was also told that Katie herself was missing too, and that nobody in the group actually knew who she was. Since then, more has come out. Katie's mother, Gracie McCormack, has publicly confirmed on Facebook that her daughter was indeed the person with Nolan that day. She says Katie has stayed in contact with the Wells family, but also says her daughter has no real insight into what happened to Nolan after the 2 of them parted ways. That matters. Katie is real. She's accounted for. Her own mother has spoken publicly, and nothing from Katie's side actually supports the version the friends gave. She isn't backing up their story, and she isn't saying Nolan told her he wanted to stay. If anything, Katie's family coming forward while Nolan's friends stay silent behind attorneys makes that contradiction louder, not quieter. Nolan's friends left that island with his phone and with his keys. According to Reverend Al Sharpton, they did not volunteer that information to authorities on their own. Christine has said she and her husband weren't handed the phone by anyone. They had to track it down themselves using the Life 360 app before retrieving it. When Christine finally got that phone into her hands and opened Snapchat, she found nothing. No photos, no videos, no save snaps, nothing at all from the entire day. She checked his second account too. Also empty. She's described Nolan as the kind of kid who documented everything, every gathering, every outing, someone who'd come up to her at bedtime just to ask her to take his picture. For his Snapchat to be completely blank, after a full day at a beach reportedly packed with people, she says that isn't just unusual, it's impossible, unless somebody deliberately went through that phone and deleted what was on it. And she checked before the 24-hour automatic deletion window had even passed, meaning whatever had been there should still have been recoverable. It wasn't. A clip circulated online appearing to show some kind of argument taking place on or near the island that day. Crump has said you can hear a voice on it he believes is Nolan's, saying, "Give me my freaking phone. What are you freaking doing?" Crump has gone back and forth slightly on how confident he is in that identification. In one interview, he pulled back. In another, alongside the family, he spoke about it with more certainty. Either way, the core of it hasn't changed. There was a recorded argument that day, and it appears to involve Nolan's phone. Now put those first 4 pieces next to each other. There's a video of an argument about a phone. His friends leave the island still holding on to that phone. His mother eventually gets the phone back and finds it wiped clean. And the reason given for leaving him behind is directly contradicted by the one witness they pointed to, a witness whose own family has since come forward and offered nothing that supports their version. Each one of those details, taken entirely on its own, could be explained away. Together, they stop reading like isolated coincidences and start reading like a pattern. This is worth pausing on, because it's a genuinely useful way to think about a case like this. Any single detail here, a delayed report, a missing phone, an inconsistent memory, has an innocent explanation available to it. People misremember stressful days. Phones get left behind. Investigations move slowly for mundane, bureaucratic reasons. The question isn't whether any one of these details in isolation proves something happened. It's whether the sheer number of them, all clustering around the same handful of hours, involving the same small group of people, starts to strain the odds of pure coincidence. That's the actual argument being made here. Not that any single fact is damning on its own, but that the accumulation of unresolved inconsistencies has grown large enough to demand real answers. Chancery Judge Ashley Cole's son, Warren, was one of the friends on that boat with Nolan. Days after Nolan's body was found, Judge Cole posted a lengthy statement to Facebook. Legal analysts examining this case have pointed out something worth noting. Judges rarely make public statements about active investigations, especially ones involving their own child. That's one of the most basic conventions of sitting on a bench. Judge Cole chose to step in anyway. She wrote that Warren was interviewed by the Jackson County Sheriff's Department and cooperated fully. She said he last saw Nolan around 3 p.m. on July 4th. She said the group left around 4:30 because their boat was taking on water and they had an issue with the bilge pump. She said Nolan made the decision to stay behind and return with another group of friends. Here's what she didn't mention: the phone, the keys, the video of the argument, the deleted Snapchat messages. She framed her statement as something meant to redirect attention back to the Wells family's grief. Not their justice, their grief. There's a real difference there. Civil rights attorney Joe Richardson, speaking publicly about this case, raised a point worth sitting with. He said Jackson County is small enough that a sitting judge almost certainly has professional relationships with the prosecutor's office, the investigating agency, and the coroner's office. He wasn't making an accusation. His point was that when the mother of one of the last people to see Nolan alive holds that kind of position within the very system investigating his death, it raises fair questions about whether a grieving family can trust that system to be fully impartial. To be clear, no one in the Cole family has been charged with any crime or formally accused of one by law enforcement. Judge Cole has stated publicly that her family isn't trying to impede the investigation in any way. Now, the timeline, because there's a gap in it, nobody has adequately explained yet. A friend of Nolan's contacted the Coast Guard around 11 p.m. on the night of July 4th. The Coast Guard has told local reporters that call did not require their assistance at the time, and they haven't disclosed what was actually discussed on it. Christine called the Jackson County Sheriff's Office around midnight to report Nolan missing. But the Sheriff's Office didn't formally request Coast Guard assistance to search for him until 12:26 the following afternoon, July 5th. More than 13 hours after the family first reported him missing. Sit with that number. An 18-year-old missing on a remote island with no facilities, no staff, no way to communicate, reachable only by boat. His mother calls at midnight. The formal search doesn't begin until the following afternoon. The Sheriff's Office didn't issue its public missing person release until 12:31 that same afternoon, 5 minutes after finally contacting the Coast Guard. A command post wasn't established at the boat launch until 5:54 that evening. By that point, Nolan had been unaccounted for more than 24 hours. That gap has raised real questions about how urgently this case was treated in its earliest hours, and it's part of why Crump has publicly asked whether the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation should take this case over entirely. Sheriff Ledbetter hasn't been accused of any misconduct. He said publicly his office is treating this case like any other and will be as thorough as possible. It's worth being fair about what a 13-hour gap can and can't tell us. Search and rescue operations, especially in remote, rural areas overnight, frequently involve exactly this kind of lag between an informal notification and a formal interagency request. That's a real, documented pattern in cases having nothing to do with this one. But it's also true that additional details about that initial 11 p.m. call, exactly what was said, who took it, and why the Coast Guard determined at the time that assistance wasn't needed, are still being gathered, according to reporting on the case. Until those specifics are filled in, this remains one of the more legitimate open questions in the entire timeline, separate from any of the more speculative theories circulating elsewhere. What's missing from the earliest hours of this investigation may say as much as what's actually in it. When Nolan's friends returned from the island without him, there's no public indication anyone documented their physical condition. Scratches, bruises, whether anyone had changed clothes, whether those questions were even asked during the initial interviews. Nobody has answered that publicly. The phone sat in the friend's possession for hours before it ever reached the family. During that window, whatever was on it could have been altered. Legal analysts examining this case have pointed out that gap alone, phone in the friend's hands, messages missing once the family finally got it back, could support an argument of evidence tampering in court, regardless of whether the specific deleted content ever turns out to be significant. It's the chain of custody itself that matters. And here's what makes it more pointed. Law enforcement has tools built for exactly this kind of situation. Exigent circumstances warrants, emergency requests that can compel a carrier or a platform like Snapchat to preserve and hand over data quickly when a missing person's phone may hold critical evidence. Multiple legal analysts have publicly asked why none of that appears to have been pursued in this case's first several days. The phone wasn't seized, no emergency preservation request has been confirmed. It was the family, not investigators, who ended up going through the device themselves. A Snap Inc. spokesperson told CBS News the company stands ready to work with law enforcement on this case. Read carefully. That statement suggests they may not have been formally engaged yet, or if they have, nobody's confirmed it publicly. Here's a smaller point, but a genuinely useful one, because it's the kind of detail that's actually easy to verify. A young woman who was on the island that day reached out to Christine after she posted publicly asking for information. She sent Christine photos from July 4th showing Nolan in blue shorts. The official report described him wearing black shorts. Blue and black aren't colors you mix up in a photograph. So either whoever filed that report didn't look closely, or they were describing somebody they hadn't actually seen that day. Either way, it's a documented photo contradicting an official record on a simple, checkable fact, which raises an obvious follow-up. If they got the shorts wrong, what else might they have gotten wrong? Crump has confirmed that the friends who were with Nolan that day have all retained their own attorneys. That means Crump's team has had no direct conversation with the people who were actually present during Nolan's final hours. Everything from that friend group has arrived secondhand through Judge Cole's Facebook statement, through whatever investigators have relayed, through the sheriff's public comments. Not one word directly from them to the family or the family's legal team. Multiple legal analysts have also pointed out something else. From what's publicly known, those same friends never joined the search for Nolan. They got lawyers instead. They didn't grab a boat and go back out to help look for their friend. Sit with that. Your friend is missing on an island, and you were among the last people with him. And instead of going back to help find him, you hire an attorney. To be fair, nobody in that friend group has been charged with any crime or named as a suspect by law enforcement. The sheriff has said they're cooperating with investigators, But cooperation isn't the same thing as transparency, and retaining a lawyer before your missing friend has even been found isn't typically the behavior of someone with nothing on their mind. This case has by now drawn support well beyond the immediate family and their attorney. Colin Kaepernick helped fund the independent autopsy. Tyler Perry is covering funeral costs. Reverend Al Sharpton has said he'll officiate Nolan's funeral once services are finalized. Filmmaker Spike Lee attended the press conference in Harlem to show his support in person. Representative Benny Thompson has urged a transparent and timely investigation. The NAACP has voiced its support for the family. And Christine, in an interview with CNN's Victor Blackwell, said she's pushing through her own grief because she needs to know she did everything possible to find out what happened to her son. When investigators first suggested to her and Elmore that this was most likely an accidental drowning, she said it made them deeply uncomfortable. Why, she asked, are we rushing to that conclusion so quickly? Elmore, in that same conversation, said Nolan had a real plan for his life: football, school, a future ahead of him. He was supposed to be back at practice that Monday, gearing up for the season. Not on a missing persons flyer, not in a coroner's report. This level of outside attention, national civil rights figures, major public personalities, sitting members of Congress, is worth putting in context. Most missing person and death investigations, even genuinely troubling ones, never draw this kind of sustained national involvement. The fact that this one speaks to a combination of things: the racial dynamics of the friend group, the visible inconsistencies in the friend's own accounts, and a grieving family that has chosen deliberately to keep pushing for answers publicly rather than grieving privately. That combination has turned what began as a local missing persons case into something closely watched well beyond Mississippi's borders. Not everyone examining this case has concluded its pace is unusual. A CNN law enforcement analyst, a former police chief who is black himself, has offered a more tempered read. He said the sheriff's original statement that no foul play was suspected was likely a poor choice of words that led to widespread misunderstanding. A more accurate statement, he said, would have been that there were no immediate, obvious signs of foul play, which is close to what the coroner actually told CNN separately. He also pushed back gently on one specific, emotionally persuasive argument that circulated widely: the idea that if Nolan had genuinely drowned, somebody surely would have seen him struggling. Drowning, according to groups that study it, doesn't always look dramatic from a distance. It can be fast and quiet and easy to miss, even in a crowded area. Separately, a spokesperson for the Mississippi Department of Public Safety has defended the pace of the investigation directly, saying every case is unique, deserves a thorough review, and cannot all be handled on the same timeline. Both of those perspectives are worth holding alongside everything else here. A family can have entirely legitimate reasons for distrust, and an investigation can also procedurally be moving at a fairly ordinary pace for a case this complex. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. Here's where this case actually stands right now. The state medical examiner performed an autopsy on July 7th. The cause and manner of death haven't been publicly released. Toxicology results are still pending, and officials have said the full results could take weeks. The independent autopsy, conducted in Washington, D.C., by a pathologist with no ties to Mississippi, was expected to produce results within days of the body's arrival. As of the most recent, credible reporting available, those results still have not been made public. Crump has said the delay is partly due to how long it took to transport Nolan's body from Mississippi, and is committed to releasing the findings publicly once they're in. I want to be direct about something here, because there's a lot of unreliable content circulating around this case online. Some sources claiming the independent autopsy results are already out, describing dramatic new findings, do not hold up to scrutiny, and conflict directly with more credible, more recent reporting confirming those results are still pending. Be cautious of anything claiming otherwise right now. We don't know the official cause of death. We don't know what either autopsy will ultimately show. We don't know what was actually on Nolan's phone before it was wiped, or who deleted it, or when. We don't know what was said on that 11 p.m. Coast Guard call, or why it was determined not to require assistance at the time. We don't know why 13 hours passed before a formal search began. And we don't know what actually happened on that island between 3 in the afternoon and the moment Nolan ended up in the water. His parents are not pushing a specific theory. They aren't accusing anyone by name. What they've said consistently across every interview is the same thing. The story they were given doesn't match the son they raised. And until somebody can explain that gap in a way that actually holds together, they aren't going to stop asking. Elmore has said something that stays with you. He spent years drilling the same lesson into Nolan. Stay with the group. Don't split off. Someday, you're going to call me and thank me for nagging you about this. A contradicted story about why he stayed. A girl whose own account doesn't support the friend's version. A recorded argument about a phone that came back wiped. A 13-hour gap before a formal search began. No confirmed emergency warrant for digital evidence. A shorts color that doesn't match the official report. A judge who made a statement she didn't need to make. Friends who retained lawyers instead of joining the search. None of those, on their own, proves anything. Together, they've become a pattern serious enough that a family, a nationally known attorney, a sitting judge's own public statement, and multiple legal analysts are all now treating it as one. The uncomfortable truth about a case like this is that patience and urgency have to coexist, even though they pull against each other constantly. A real investigation, done properly, takes weeks for toxicology, takes time to build a case that would actually survive a courtroom, takes patience that a grieving family, understandably, doesn't have much of. At the same time, every day that passes without clear answers gives more room for speculation, for rumor, for theories built on far less than what's been laid out here, to fill the silence instead. Both of those pressures are real, and neither one cancels the other out. We're going to stay on this case. As both autopsy results actually come in, as those deleted messages are potentially recovered, and as this investigation, wherever it leads, moves forward. We'll bring you the facts as we actually get them verified, and not a moment before. If you have any information about what happened on Horn Island on July 4th, contact the Jackson County Sheriff's Office directly. That's all we have for you right now. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe so you don't miss the next update on this case. See you next time, everybody.